Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 podcast with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, joined as always by the fantastic co-hosts of the show, George and Prath. How are we doing? All good?
All good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Very good.
Doing good, sir.
Good man, good man. Today we are joined by Adler, who hit us up on Instagram and Twitter, I believe it was, wanted to jump on the show. So Adler, thank you very much for joining us as well, man.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
No drama. As we said before, we are always happy to feature people from the MMA community. It connects different people from all over the world, and it connects people that enjoy the sport of MMA, as we've spoken about. So we'll jump straight into it. Obviously, this weekend we have UFC 258, which is, in the hardcore opinion, it's very, very good. In the casual opinion, it's mediocre. It's okay. As we were speaking about before we hit record on this, there's a lot of fights on there that the hardcore fan is going to know. They're going to know every single fight, from top to bottom. But to be honest with you, I think it's going to be a few good knockouts, good TKOs and subs and stuff in between a lot of decision wins for quite a lot of these fighters, as probably most of us assume there will be anyway. So we're going to jump straight in and break down the first fight. Prath is going to break down the first fight, which is Rodolfo versus Hernandez. Shoot, man.
What an incredible fight for Rodolfo Vieira here to really take a win. It kind of feels like a little bit of a layup fight. Rodolfo Vieira is probably one of the widely regarded best jiu-jitsu fighters in the world. 4-time world champion, 7-time World Cup winner. Just honestly, one of the best ever. His record in jiu-jitsu is 100 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. And that just speaks to volumes of how just uniquely incredible this person is in terms of their acumen on the ground, their ability to find the submissions. He's got very, very odd submissions like bow and arrow choke and things like that as well. So, he comes through with a very, very powerful game. And if you look at him, he looks like an incredibly powerful person. And I think every single competitor that has gone against Rodolfo Vieira will tell you the exact same thing. He just looks like a tank, man. And the person that he's fighting, Anthony Hernandez, is coming off of a TKO loss to Kevin Holland. And that's not saying that Kevin Holland is a scrub in any way, shape, or form. But I feel like with someone like Rodolfo Vieira, 7-0, all wins by finish as well. Like, I feel like this is a little bit of a layup fight for him. I do ultimately probably see this going to a decision or a really late finish. I think Rodolfo Vieira isn't as known for his really early submissions. He doesn't really like to grind them out, get them down to the later rounds, and then kind of go for that finish. And I see it as a real stepping stone for Rodolfo Vieira to really, really push himself into that top, very much top echelon of that division. And I do see him eventually winning a title. He's just looked nothing but dominant against everyone that he's fought. And he's gotten finishes off of all of them. And I feel like that's really speaks volume about how you fight and how you approach the fight itself. He doesn't see it as like, I'm going to go in and do points. I'm going to go in and get the submission as quickly as possible. And en route to that, he's actually gotten a couple of TKO wins, which is very rare for jiu-jitsu fighters to get those kind of ground TKO wins. They usually do just go for the sub or allow the other person to stand up before going for it. So, massive threat in the middleweight division. I as someone that has competed in jiu-jitsu myself before, like, for me, that is like, he's like Damian Maia. He is the guy that we wanted Damian Maia to be. So let's hope that Rodolfo can get into that title picture and can take it. I just see him really being unstoppable in this division, man. And I think no one in the middleweight division, apart from maybe Paulo Costa, has really the ground acumen that someone like Rodolfo Vieira, who's been training for many, many years. So really, really interested in this one. And I can't wait to see Rodolfo Vieira go in and tear it up, man.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be an absolute banger. Maybe not from a throwing hands kind of banger, but it will be a technical chess match kind of banger for sure. The whole 15 minutes, I think if it goes the distance, it will be kind of like what we saw last week with Dariush. It was a grinding fight. They were both going backwards and forwards. There was good groundwork. There was good stand up, and they both really, really put themselves in their best light for sure.
Hernandez is a really good wrestler boxer as well. So it's going to be difficult to get him down. regardless, I think Rodolfo is not really known for his double leg takedowns or his single leg takedowns. He's known to just kind of drag them to the floor, and then once they're on the ground, then he can go to work. Even if he's on the bottom and he jumps to guard, or if he's on top and he's on that top pressure, this is going to be a fantastic chess match. I'd love to see Rodolfo Vieira fight like a Damian Maia one day, but I don't think that's something that will ever happen. But my God, I'd be frothing at the mouth to watch something like that.
So what's a bow and arrow choke? You said he's hit up a few bow and arrows before, but what is that, man?
It's kind of like a stretch. It's like a stretch submission through the back.
Okay.
And it just takes a lot of the reason why you wouldn't normally see it in mixed martial arts is it's because you kind of have to rely on grabbing the gi to get that choke. So you'd normally see it in a lot of those kind of ADCC and in just jiu-jitsu competitions in general. But the crazy thing about him is he's hitting this on a world championship stage in the finals. He's hitting these submissions that take so much preparation to actually kind of set it up and get to that point. He's doing this in like the gold medal level fights, and for him to do that is sensational.
Yeah, man. No,
and it must take so much patience as well. It takes patience.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people train Brazilian jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu in general for years upon years upon years before getting any sort of recognition. We've obviously had a lot of UFC fighters been given their purple belt or something mid-fight, and you think this person's been a champ for years, and they're only just getting their purple belt or blue belt, whatever it may be. They're only just getting given that in the middle of the octagon, and it's pretty crazy when you look at it like that.
And it's just I think when you see it a lot when I think it's really weird when they give it to him after like a knockout win. When they give it after a submission win, I'm like, okay, fair enough. They've kind of deserved getting that. But I've seen a few when they've like knocked someone out and then they give them like a black belt, and I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, they're a black belt in knockouts. That's what they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But another fight I'm looking forward to on the card is the Miller versus Green fight. Adley, going to break that down for us, man.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone pretty much knows these two, right? Jim Miller, he's really, really high level black belt. Bobby Green, pretty slick kickboxer. Both of them, I was just looking at their records. I think the best bet on this is decision. Like, I don't see how this doesn't go decision. If I had to say how it goes, I think Bobby Green just pieces him up for 3 rounds, just bounces around. It comes to fight. I was watching Dan Hardy's thing earlier, and it did sway my mind a little bit. He said that Jim Miller, kind of like he did to Guida, would just come out, slip a punch, and then just, while they're both dry, just latch on a choke, because I guess Bobby Green just doesn't warm up at all, so he'll just be completely dry. I thought that was just something interesting to look at, but otherwise I see it as pretty straightforward. Jim's going to get pieced up for 3 rounds.
Yeah, of course. And these guys they're a little bit older in their lives as well, you know. Jim, just looking here, Jim Miller's 37, he's 32 and 15. Bobby Green's 27 and 11. You know, these guys have had some serious fights. So obviously it's nice to see that the UFC is still bringing in the fighters that are on the back end of their career, and they're not pitching them up against, as we spoke about in the last episode, they're not pitching them up against absolute killers. You know, they're not pitching them up against these 27-year-old straight killers. No one wants to see Clay Guida get beaten up by a top 5. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be good for his own mental health moving forward. But putting 2 guys up there, rather similar age, very, very similar in stats as well, height, reach, etc. I think it's good for both of them guys, you know, to finish out their career having a few nice fights, make a bit of coin as well, and not take too much damage in the later part of their lives. So then after that, we've got George. You're going to break down the Kelvin Heinisch fight. I mean, we disagree on this. I think Heinisch is going to take him because Kelvin Gastelum is a bit of a scrub now, in my opinion. I know that he's had a few losses to very, very top contenders and stuff like that. But I feel like last time he was out, he just, you know, he got subbed within the first 30 seconds by the Joker, and it didn't look very good. I think that will play on his mind as well. I think that when he comes out, he'll be coming out of the changing room, the locker room, or whatever, when he's warmed up, thinking, right, I need to get this win. Otherwise, he's going to go for it 0-4. And no one wants that. There's so much pressure on these fighters' shoulders to keep winning, because as soon as they fall into a loss streak, like we saw with Conor McGregor takes 1 loss, obviously he's taken a few in the past, but he takes one loss after the Cowboy win, and everyone's like, right, he's done now. He's retired. He's a scrub again. It's very difficult to stay to stay in the public eye and to be, you know, that person that you can take a couple of losses and still, you know, bounce back and stay, you know, have a good amount of a fan base as well. But George, how do you see it going, bud?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely think Danish should be getting his bonus checks ready, because I think this could be a fight of the night contender between these two guys. And I also think as well that whilst the champion away playing at light heavyweight, this is a chance for some guys to become contenders in that division, to start pushing themselves further up. Heinisch has got that opportunity. I think he's at 15 at the moment, so he's got a chance to try and break a top 10. Gastelum's 9, which does seem like he's fallen quite far in the last year or two, but a win now probably pushes you further back up. I struggle with the washed up, he's no good anymore Gastelum. Losing 3 in a row is tough, but when you lose to Adesanya, Till, and Hermansson, it's not good to lose 3 fights in a row. But it's not like you're losing to terrible competition. These are pretty high level guys. One's the champion, and the other 2 are top 5, in that division. So it's not that bad. Heinisch is an interesting one though, and as is Gastelum, because they're both previous state wrestling champions from Colorado and Arizona. And usually what we always say is when you have 2 guys who like to wrestle, you usually having this rule kind of like stand up brawl, don't you? Mm-hmm. And I imagine that this is probably where it's heading. I imagine that these guys are going to try and swing and come out quick. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, but definitely I can see a bit of blood being shed in this one. And I watched an interview this morning with Kelvin Gastelum, and he said that he feels like he's fighting for his UFC career in this fight, which seemed a bit of a weird stance to take. Maybe that alludes into the fact that going 4-0 isn't that great in the UFC. But, when I think about how it's going to go and how it's going to play out, 3 of the last 4 fights for Gastelum have gone to decision. Heinisch had a win over Meerschaert in his last fight, I think, which lasted 74 seconds. And then he finished him. But they've both got heavy hands. And if I had to go with one way, I could see potentially this being a split decision on the cards. And I think that Gastelum will take this. I think there's a level of before we started this as well, we all said it. There's a level of I'm really pissed off with how people think of me at the moment. And a big performance, a big win, however that comes, kind of sends him back in the right direction and onto more fights for the rest of the year. So yeah, for me, Kelvin Gastelum on points.
Yeah, definitely. I think this will be a decision as well. Obviously, Ian Heinisch has never been TKO'd. He's only got 3 losses on his professional career.
Also, the other thing, sorry to interrupt. The other thing about Ian Heinisch is I think he's 3-2 in his UFC career, and both of his losses top 10 guys, which means there's a suggestion that perhaps was top. Yeah, so when it comes to top 10 competition, I think in his UFC career he's 3-2, and both of his losses are coming against top 10 guys. And Gastelum's obviously ranked 9, and so I think this is another potential problem that perhaps when he moves up a level in competition at the moment, Heinisch, he's struggling to find the win. But, he looked pretty good up against Meerschaert last time out, and he clearly has got a good all-round skill set. But I think against a guy who's got a lot of experience, and he's only 29 years old, I think Gastelum, I just think this is going to be perhaps just maybe a little bit too far at the moment for Heinisch. But, we'll see. It's a great fight, and I definitely think it's got potential to be fight of the night.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously as fans, we look at someone that's been in the sport for quite a long time. Take your Max Holloways, for instance, who's been in the sport for a very, very long time, and at a very young age, he was competing at a very, very high level. And by the time they get to kind of 29, even Jose Aldo is a prime example. He's in his prime of his career, age-wise, but he's had so many fights and he's been fighting at such a high level for such a long time that people go, oh, well, he's a veteran now. He should be retiring. But these guys are not that old. Heinisch is 31, I think I just saw, and Gastelum's 29. So both of these dudes are still pretty young. Adler, how do you see the Heinisch-Gastelum fight going?
Yeah, that's what I just think the Gastelum's going to come out too aggressive. I think that like the level of competition he's been fighting is just too high, and I think that his last two fights were like Till just had a really good game plan, but Gastelum didn't get beat up. Like that's, I mean, I'm wearing a Till hat, like so, but like Till controlled that fight and won the fight, and I think that when against Hermanson, he just made the wrong decision. He tried to push through the heel hook instead of rolling out of it. And I just think that he's going to come really mad. I'm just looking at it how Heinisch could win. And I think the only way he could win is if he was just like kind of careful like Till was and just like out positioned him and worked him and did what he could for decision. But I just don't think he's disciplined enough. And I just don't see any other way that Gastelum loses.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. With obviously only two submissions on Heinisch's record and 7 decisions. So I think from a betting standpoint, and I'm definitely going to put a couple of quid on this in my accumulator or parlay, however you want to say it, I will be putting money on this fight to be going the distance. The odds probably won't be very good, but I think it will boost up my overall accumulator. And then we've got the co-main, which I'm surprised this was put at the co-main because I felt like the Kelvin Gastelum fight versus Ian Heinisch would have been the co-main for this event, but obviously we've got Grasso versus Macy Barber. And last time we saw Macy Barber out, she was against Roxanne Modafferi, and she obviously had an injury to her knee, I believe it was. And then she took the mic and she acted like a spoilt child. There's no two ways around it. She was a spoilt child on the mic, and I don't think it played in her favor for a lot of the fans as well, because no one needs that shit. The person that's going in there and doing the interview, the post-fight interview with the winner of the fight, the loser is obviously going to be in an emotional state. I think there's been a lot of controversy over the years with Joe Rogan, I believe it was, when he went in and did an interview with DC, and DC was like crying and stuff like that. And you think that's why you don't interview the person that's just lost, because they've just lost, and the emotional heartache is going to be huge going into that. So I think putting all of that behind us as well. Obviously, she's fit, she's healthy now. She's coming out against Grasso. She's always been a bit of a brawler as well, so I think that will be her game plan coming into this: brawl and bully Grasso down and try and get the TKO or the win on kind of most damage to opponent kind of thing. But Prath, how do you see it going, man?
So I really like both fighters. I think Grasso's always been she was really, really excellent in Invicta, and when she came over, there was really, really high expectations for her to be one of the stars of that strawweight division when it was first being brought in. And I was actually just looking at her record. In her last 7 fights, she's kind of bounced wins and losses. Literally like 1 win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And if we're going off of the track record here of the way that her record is, she is probably going to lose this fight just because of the way that the way that her record has been set up. I'm gonna hope that doesn't make an influence on the actual fight itself. But you're saying that you're surprised that Macy Barber is in the co-headlining spot, and I'm actually not, because I do know that Macy Barber is someone that they are very, very high on, especially Dana White. Dana White is very, very very keen on getting her to be kind of a star of that strawweight division. So I can see them wanting to kind of book her in a fight that is maybe, I wouldn't say a layup fight for her. It's going to be a tough fight for her, but it's a winnable fight for her. So I think it's one of those ones where they have clearly given Macy Barber the pedestal to kind of be the next kind of star of that division. I think it's going to be very, very tough for her once she gets into the Weili Zhangs and the Rose Namajunas of that division. They're just, from a technical standpoint, just, I think, leaps and bounds beyond most of the other people in that division. Just those 3, I think we talked about it before, those 3 are going to sit at the top of that division for a very long time, and they're just going to alternate between each other because they are the best in that division. So yeah, in my opinion, I feel like this is a fight that they've kind of given to Macy Barber for her to win. Does she win? I think Alexa Grasso is a very crafty I wouldn't say veteran, but she's crafty, and she's got a really good skill set, both on the ground and standing up. So I see her giving Macy fits, but I think Macy will probably ultimately win this by decision. Okay. She does have a lot of TKO wins as well. Like, that's nothing that you can kind of count out. She's got, most of her wins are actually by TKO. So we can't discredit that. And you can see that she clearly hits very, very hard. will take away the Roxanne fight. I think Roxanne clearly beat her, ACL injury or not. You see a lot of these guys have these injuries and don't say anything, and either win or lose, and then they go on with their day. And I think you're right in saying that giving her the microphone after a loss is you're never going to get the best version of that person out. And I think that was a disservice to her because they want to make her a star. Hindsight 2020, you never really know these things. I think they just, because they wanted to develop her as a star, they wanted to give her that time to talk on the mic and be like, hey, this is what happened. My knee was broken or hurt or whatever it was. And that takes away from Roxanne's win, because Roxanne, the happy warrior, is someone that I think a lot of the fans root for because of her personality. And I think to put her in that situation with someone who is so loved by the fans, it ultimately makes Macy Barber not look like the competitive person that we want her to be. So let's hope that this is a time now where she can come back from that experience in general and can really mature as a fighter and as a person. I know that she has stopped working with Ben Askren in Milwaukee. Forget the American states. She used to work with Ben Askren in Milwaukee, and now she's gone to Chicago and is working with the guys that worked with Yair Rodriguez. I forget the name of that team, but I think it's like Valley Flow Striking, and they have a phenomenal stand-up game. As you know, with Yair Rodriguez, he's got a very diverse stand-up game. So maybe we see some crazy spinning attack. Who knows? But it'd be cool for her to really like kind of step her level up, because I do feel like with Roxanne, with Jillian, and with JJ Aldridge, last 3 fights that she had, she did kind of go in thinking she is going to just steamroll this person, and it ended up being a tough fight, even though she got the TKO and those 2 wins and the loss to Roxanne. Sometimes you do need to just mature as a fighter in your overall game to really make those strides into the top echelon of the division.
Yeah, that's it. And she is only 8-1 as well. I think the Roxanne fight for Macy was going to be that bounce fight. And now they've kind of given her another bounce fight to kind of excel herself and excel her name. But, sometimes when the UFC pick like a poster boy or poster girl or whatever, and they really want to push this person, sometimes they push them too far and they push them too quickly and they crack under pressure. We saw with Sage Northcutt, he came in, he was supposed to be this kind of like golden child, got knocked out consistently, and then he has to come away from the game now, and then we see. Go on.
I was just going to say, it goes one way or the other, right? Pressure makes diamonds. So when they get put under that pressure, they either excel like Conor McGregor, or they get grinded down like Sage Northcutt. And I think you can only know what a person's capable of until you put them in that situation. Like if Macy Barber takes this win now and she goes on and fights Joanna's going to destroy her because her technique and her level is just above in that way. There's nothing that Macy Barber can bring to the table that will even make Joanna flinch. So I think it takes time to really build up those stars, but sometimes you do need to just chuck them into the fire and hope that will really make them, like a TJ Dillashaw against Henan Brow, really rise to that occasion and become the world championship fighter that they clearly see in her.
Yeah, definitely, man. George, how do you see it going? Because Prath's going with the decision for Macy Barber, but what do you see it? How do you see it playing out?
Either decision for Macy Barber, or I can see Macy Barber knocking her out potentially. I think when you look back at that Roxanne fight, people have bad nights at the office, don't they? And that was just an all-round bad night at the office. She walked in there like she thought, like Prath said, like she's going to absolutely destroy her, and it didn't work. And then she had her awful interview, and it just all was quite a bad experience. And perhaps someone, I think, how old is she? 21? 22, something like that.
Yeah,
there's an element of like trying to run before you can walk, isn't there? And maybe we won't see the best of Macy Barber for another 7, 8, 9 years potentially. And actually that's probably all right, because another length of that time, quite a long period of time to kind of get to that point. She's quite good already. In 7 or 8 years' time, she could be seriously good. I kind of agree as well. This is kind of like almost like have this fight, make sure you get through it, but you should get through it, because if you're fighting someone who wins, then loses, then wins, then loses, you're kind of like, this person can't seem to consistently put a run together. And so there should be this element that you can't walk in there like you did against Modafferi and just think you're going to starch the person, but you should be confident enough that you're going to be able to get some kind of result against them. So yeah, she is definitely viewed though, like Praf said, she's definitely viewed as like this, like as a potential kind of like star of the future. And I suppose the UFC are always looking for female stars because there isn't a massive amount of them. There are obviously some coming through now, but they're always looking for that next person. And Macy Barber has got the potential to be that next person or one of the next people to come through, but she just needs to slow it all down, just put wins together, develop a more rounded game than just being like a brawler, and just with it, because like none of us or anyone in the MMA community are thinking, oh, she should be in a title fight. Like, just go out there and get wins and continue to develop as a mixed martial artist. And that's kind of where I sit with Macy Barber when I think about her. So I'm expecting her to win on Saturday night, definitely, and hopefully she'll have a more jolly interview afterwards.
That's it. So if Macy does get the win, Adler, who do you see her fighting next? Because naturally she's not going to be thrusted into fighting Valentina Shevchenko or, Andrade or Chukagian or something like that, because I think that would be too high of a competition for her. But is there anyone you'd pitch for her to be fighting afterwards in that division?
Feed her Jessica I or something. I don't know. If she looks really good, because no one likes Jessica I.
She looks really good. Maybe even Calderwood.
It's true.
Maybe Calderwood or I, if she does go out there. And
I think she said she wanted Calderwood if she won. That might be someone else, but I think someone said they wanted Calderwood if they won. I think it was her.
Yeah, it probably would, because that would be a good little. Because obviously Joanne Calderwood's sitting at number 6, I believe. So that'd be a good little step up in competition. Obviously with Macy Barber being at 10. But no, I think it will be a good fight, and I think it will be, like we said, it will be one of these decision wins in between a few knockouts and stuff like that. I think a lot of these fights will go to decision throughout the weekend, which will be difficult for the UK fans because obviously the main card starts at 3 p.m. 3 a.m. even, sorry.
3 a.m.
The main card starts at 3 a.m. So obviously these fights are going to be going until kind of 6, 7 o'clock for us if they do go to decision as well, which will be a serious stretch. But it's a good thing there's only one belt on the line.
I stopped staying up. I just wake up for him. I can't stay up for it anymore. I just set an alarm.
Yeah. I mean,
he knows.
Don't blame me.
You're going to get deemed as a casual now, but I'll let you off.
No, I'll wake up for the whole card. I'll just take a nap at 8.
Tactically sleep your way through. Yes, you're not a casual. You tactically sleep your way through it. That if anything, is more hardcore.
I take 2 naps instead of a sleep that night.
Yeah, you've got to have a little bit of snooze, haven't you? Because that's what I do.
Well, I do like 8 to 12, and then 12 is when the fights start, and then I'll do like 6 or whenever they end to like noon, and then that's my Sunday.
Yeah.
There
and those are the struggles of someone in Europe watching the UFC as well. Which takes us up to
Vegas.
Which takes us up to the point where probably most of us are going to be napping throughout this fight. I obviously hope it doesn't go the way that everyone is predicting it's going, being a decision for Usman. I think both of these guys being, having good wrestling, good BJJ, stuff like that. I am kind of hoping that they just stand and bang, which we obviously see with quite a lot of matchups like this. Obviously seeing Usman versus Masvidal and Covington and stuff like that. He just wants to get people up against the side of the cage. He's implementing his old school wrestling of foot stomps and punching the feet and doing kind of mad shit that he gets really, really beasted for on social media. And a lot of people dislike him so much. But at the end of the day, if he's on a 10 and 10, for instance, obviously he's not, it's a lot more than that. But if he's on a 10 to fight, 10 to win, I don't care how I'm getting my other 10. Do you know what I mean? I want to get out there and I want to get that other 10 the best I can, because then you can support your family. And obviously he does a lot of stuff back in his hometown as well and supporting his local community, which he has to have some props for. But I see this being a decision for Usman. I think he's going to grind him out and he's going to just do exactly what Khabib does. Khabib doesn't get nearly as much shit as Usman does, but they both have a very... I'm going to do it in inverted commas here. They have a very boring style, but they go out there and they get W's. Do you know what I mean? So we have to look at it from a win point of view. Prath, how do you see it going? Do you think Burns is going to cause the upset and we're going to have a champ called Gilbert?
Interesting that you compare Khabib and Kamaru, because I would say Khabib's style on the ground is phenomenal because he advances, he doesn't stay in one place. He's on side control, then he's on mount, then he's not in mount, then he's in half guard, and then he's on the other side, and then he's on his back. And then I feel like that side of Khabib is what really kind of elevates him, and I think makes people enjoy watching him fight on the ground. God, I hate to kind of agree with you a little bit here. I do feel like Kamaru's going to do a lot of grinding. I think when he's faced with someone who isn't like a top level wrestler, we're always going to kind of see Kamaru use his wrestling here in a way. I am going to go for the funky pick though. I do think Gilbert Burns has the ground game to catch Kamaru in a transition, in a takedown, in a double leg position, I could see Kamaru Usman being he's the guy that would like lift someone up to slam them for style points, that kind of thing. And I could just see Gilbert catching him in a triangle or catching him in a funky guillotine and potentially getting the sub here, man. I think Gilbert's wildly underrated on the ground in comparison to most of the other people in the welterweight division. So even though Kamaru is a destroyer, man, and I know our boy George here has got some great notes on Kamaru Usman, I will say that Gilbert is not someone to be trifled with. And I think as long as Kamaru has that in the back of his mind and he approaches his game the way he wants to, I think he can really, really grind him out for a decision here. So I'm going to tip my hat towards Gilbert, and I'm going to say that Gilbert's going to take this by 4th round guillotine.
Solid pick. Obviously, he's got 8 submission wins out of his 19, so he is no scrub on the ground, as you say, and he's only lost 2 decisions and 1 TKO. So, I don't think Usman's going to go in there and try and knock his head off, because we haven't seen an amazing elite level of striking from him in the past. Yeah. But he did break Colby's jaw, so I think we need to give him props on his hands as well, of what he can do standing up also.
Yeah, I think Gilbert was killing himself at 55, and now we've seen a completely different Gilbert Burns come ahead now at 170, putting away people like Gunnar Nelson, and not putting away, but like, having great fights against these guys who are widely regarded as the real elite of the welterweight division. And he's done work on a lot of these guys. Like Damian Maia is someone I respect a lot, but he did work to Damian Maia. So I'm interested to see how this pans out, and they're both former teammates as well, so that thrown into the entire mix, into the cauldron of this fight is an interesting take on it. And I'm just excited to see, man. I think it's definitely going to be a hardcore fans. If you really like the tactics of the fight game, you're really going to enjoy this fight. I think if you're looking for a slugfest, look a little bit more towards Kelvin Gastelum versus Ian Heinisch. But if you're looking for a high level technical grappling exchanges as well as technical stand up, you're looking at two of the best people in the world right there.
Yeah, definitely. I think a smart pick for that from a betting perspective would either be Burns to get its side of the distance or Usman to finish by decision. I think, if you look at his previous wins with Woodley, Covington, even the Covington fight, Covington was saying that he could have finished it off, but he was going to lose anyway, I feel. And, there wasn't obviously a lot of time left in that round, but, and that would have been a decision. None of us would have batted an eye if we'd have seen that go to decision as well. But we're actually going to have a little side note and go to George's Crush Corner, because, Manel Cap got this little shout out last week for being a very attractive man. And obviously Frankie Edgar is a very attractive man also. So we're going to side note over to George, and he's going to tell us who he fancies on the whole card.
Well, look, first of all, what I want to say is that my man Crush Corner this week is Kamaru Usman. And when I think about this fight, Kamaru Usman isn't boring. He's just better than everybody else. That's the simple fact of it. He just makes it. He makes it look simple. He's not boring. It's just like Khabib, isn't it? He just makes it look simple. And so for that reason, he's definitely not, in my opinion, I don't find him to be boring at all. I just think he's better than all the competition that he gets put against. Gilbert Burns is probably his toughest test technically that he'll come up against, I think. But when I think about Kamaru Usman, I always come back to the fight IQ, I come back to the game plan, I come back to the mental toughness, and all of those things he's got in abundance. Like, he came through that Colby Covington fight, and let's be honest, like, the amount of people sat in that audience with "Make America Great Again" t-shirts and literally abusing him for weeks, and Covington like racially abusing him, to come through all of that and still finish him off shows a level of mental toughness. His game plan for every fighter is high level. That's why he wins 50-45. And I've pulled up some statistics which are going to also dispel the myth that he's boring. So bear with me, and here we go. Ground control positions in grappling, 97.36%. He lands 12.5 significant strikes per minute. He's landed more significant strikes than any of his opponents in the UFC. He's only the second man in history to do that. The only other guy was Demetrius Johnson. Against Tyron Woodley, who Gilbert Burns has also fought, he had 18 minutes and 13 seconds of ground control time. In that amount of time, he accounted for 100% of that. In comparison, Gilbert Burns had just under 10 minutes and only accounted for 74% of that. All right. In a minimum of 10 fights in the UFC, he ranks third all time for significant strikes landed. He actually threw more strikes from distance than Jorge Masvidal did in their fight, which I couldn't believe. He also outstrikes his opponent by 3.27 strikes a minute. That's second on the all-time list of welterweights, only behind George St. Pierre. So for me, it's not that he's boring. It's just that he's so good compared to everybody else, and his game is so good, and he knows how to win because his game plans are so good. That's why people think he's boring. He's not. He's just too good for everybody else. And Gilbert Burns is going to find it out on Saturday. You know, Gilbert Burns is his toughest test, in my opinion. He's got great wrestling. He's got great grappling. He's a ferocious striker. He's got all the tools you possibly could need to try and win that fight. But it's not going to work. Kamaru Usman is just too good, and he'll win by unanimous decision again this Saturday.
Do you think it'll be a 50-45, or do you think he's going to 10-8 him a couple of times?
10-8. No, I don't think he'll 10-8 him, but I don't. Will he win every round? That's the question. I don't think he'll win every round, but I can see him winning 4 rounds.
But during that one round that Burns is going to win, is he going to put enough damage on him? You know, and Kamaru has been subbed before, so is he going to fall foul to a very, very high level submission artist? You know,
his IQ is just too high. Like it's like you said about Khabib, it's just too high. He's too and it's not like, I mean, obviously he was with Henry Hoof before, but now he's with like one of the best coaches like in the whole game in Trevor Whitman, and it's like, you can't tell me that you think that Trevor Whitman and Kamaru Usman aren't going to come up with a game plan that completely, not nullifies Gilbert Burns, but really puts Gilbert Burns in a difficult position. That's how I see it going. They'll walk in there being so confident that their plan will work that Gilbert Burns is going to struggle, even though they've been training partners for however long, for a long, long time. I just think there's something amazing about these fighters that just when they step in, they just look unstoppable, and that's what Kamaru Usman is at the moment. There's not a guy in that division who stops Kamaru Usman at the moment for me. Not a single one. Maybe Chimaev one day, maybe, but at the moment, there's nobody.
Of course, yeah. So hypothetically speaking, obviously, if Usman comes through with the W here, who fights next for the belt, Adler? Who do you think's next in contention? Obviously, we've got Leon Edwards fighting Chimaev soon as well. Stephen Thompson, sorry, and then the rest of people that he's beaten anyway. Who do you think's next in line?
I think Leon, if he wins, I think you have to, right? Like that's just fair. Even Kamaru said Leon was his hardest opponent to date as well, so that's good. If Chimaev wins, I think Chimaev still needs another fight. I think that it's unrealistic. It's obviously they're just trying to like push him to a title shot so fast that it looks cool. If they give him one after Leon, like I think that would just be. I think anyone would need another fight. Like I don't think anyone's ready for title shot right off the bat, but I really hope that if Wonder Boy looks good again, they give him another one, because I like Wonder Boy a lot, and I don't know. I think that I still don't even think Usman wins though, so that's why I think it throws like a stick in the wheel, or one of the bike references.
What? So you think Burns is going to come out with a W of the weekend?
Yeah, I initially it was Usman decision like everyone else, but then just like listening to them talk, like Burns just seems excited about it, and Usman seems like everything he says is trying to convince people that he's gonna be more aggressive than he was in training, and Burns just seems excited. And then you look at their styles, and Usman can essentially do everything he does in a fight in the training room, because it's a lot more control over or position over submission type stuff, but Burns in a fight, you'd imagine that he can't really train like that because he's just throwing like shots all the time, like constantly like scrambling, rolling around and stuff. Like, I just think that the difference in fighters between training room and the actual fight between them is going to be, it'll catch Usman off guard. I think. I think it'll be a really good fight. A war, maybe like Burns 3 rounds to 2 or something like that. But I think Burns spazzes it out for the win.
Nice. Solid pick, man. Solid pick. Are you going to be putting any bets on over the weekend, or?
Yeah, but I just like bet on fucking everything, so I like feel like a winner at the end. I like put like 10 pounds on and put a bunch of different parlays, and hopefully one of them works. I'm not a big gambler.
Nah, it's the best.
Curiously, I was wondering if Chimaev does beat Leon, who does he fight next?
Wonder Boy, and then the winner fights for the title.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's
I do think that they put Chimaev in a title if he does beat Leon. Unfortunately,
oh, they probably will. They probably will. But I won't be happy about it.
No, I like the idea of, and the Wonderboy fight's great because of the style differences is phenomenal as well. I think Tyron Woodley really experienced what it was to go through a Stephen Wonderboy fight camp 3 times in a row, and having to prepare for that particular style. I think really kind of levels you up in some way, or in Tyron Woodley's case, level you down.
Yeah, for sure. And this division, we speak about the lightweight division being very, very stacked and tight at the top. But when you got Burns, Covington, Edwards, Masvidal, Thompson, Chiesa obviously looked very good last time he was out as well. All of these guys, and they're all very, very elite level competition. And then you throw in the Chimaevs, and the Li Jingliang obviously looked fantastic last time he was out as well. So there's a lot of people sitting on the outside of the division, outside of the top 10 of the division, sorry, that are just crawling. They are scraping to get into fighting these top 5 guys. And obviously we're seeing the back end of Tyron Woodley as well. We're obviously waiting for the Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal release to be completely finalized. And I think there's a lot of movement in this division over this year as well. But in more topical news, obviously Bellator made an announcement yesterday. Obviously we're recording this on Wednesday, but they made an announcement yesterday about their light heavyweight tournament, which obviously features quite a lot of ex-UFC fighters. I think that was a kind of dig at the UFC and kind of saying like, look, we've picked up all of these great guys now. We're going to pitch them all together in a classic Bellator tournament style. I think it's a very good, very smart business move from them as well, especially when they've got Rumble Johnson versus Yoel Romero, which are 2 huge names that everyone in the UFC fan base would know about. So I think it's going to be very, very good stylistically for a lot of these fighters as well that are being pitched up. But Prath, what kind of catches your eye on that tournament? There's obviously a lot of bangers on there.
So I think you phrased it perfectly, man. Like it looks like it's mostly ex-UFC fighters. There's 2 different fighters that I haven't got as much knowledge in. One gentleman whose name is never going to be pronounced by me. And then the other one being Vadim Nemkov, who is the champion of Bellator and had the phenomenal win over Ryan Bader in his last fight. I think it's really smart for them to stack these fights together. Having 2 of them on one card and having the other 2 on the other card, and having the other 2 being Vadim Nemkov versus Phil Davis and Anthony Johnson versus Yoel Romero on the same card. I think it's going to bring so many eyes to their product. A massive shout out to them getting back onto Showtime for the first time. Scott Coker has been working with Showtime since the Strikeforce days. So I'm excited to see what the presentation looks like of the product. I think it's going to be, it really felt like it was kind of like almost them like restarting Bellator in a way. And I think really like, hey, we've taken some, maybe not some smarter business decisions in the last while. Sorry, my words are not coming out of my mouth. So they've obviously come off quite a few events, but that maybe weren't as successful. And I think that they've recalculated everything and thought, okay, we need something to really re-energize the fans with Bellator fighting. And it's funny, the other day we were talking about how Michael Ben Page commented on a Bellator post saying like it's funny that you want people to take you seriously and you're posting goofy shit on their Twitter account, and to then like a couple of days later for them to announce this insane tournament with some of the best fighters in the world, legitimately some of the best fighters in the world, Anthony Johnson, Yoel Romero, the two top guys of the light heavyweight and the middleweight division, respectively, going at it. And I think Yoel's going to really have, I wouldn't say that Yoel was particularly sucked out when he was getting down to 185. He didn't really look like he was particularly sucked out compared to the other guys. But I do know in those, he's in his 40s now, cutting down to 185 pounds is going to be very, very challenging. Staturally, I don't know how he will do against someone like Anthony Johnson, who's got a gigantic frame. I don't know, I think he's going to need to do those kind of like overhands. He's going to be doing a lot of those ducking overhands. And I see, someone like Anthony Johnson, who the first thing I always think of when I think of Anthony Johnson is the knockout against Glover Teixeira, where he threw that beautiful uppercut about 6 seconds into the fight. And I feel like if Yoel is kind of getting low and trying to hit him with his overhands, that Anthony Johnson can really put his lights out with something like an uppercut. But I do know in the pre-fight, Adler was talking about how Yoel Romero had his neck fused. And I think that does actually kind of make a difference when you're absorbing damage. I'm sure Adler's got a slightly more studious answer to that. But for me, I just look at a man who has a giant neck and go, okay, it's going to be impossible to knock that dude out. I'm looking forward to these other fights as well. Ryan Bader against Lyoto Machida. I can't remember if they've had that fight before, but that's an interesting fight to me. Lyoto Machida kind of having a little bit of a resurgence in these last couple of fights, showing a different side to him as well, and coming out with just a more rounded game. I think he was always kind of just the karate guy, and now he's a little bit more, he's more aware of the cage and controlling the cage as well. So be interesting to see that. I think the Corey Anderson fight is going to be a decision from hell, because I think this other gentleman looks like he's a bear of a wrestler. So that's just from me looking at him right now. But he could be like an incredible kickboxer, and we'd never know, or I would never know until we watch these fights. So I'm really, really excited. I don't know if I could tell that, but there's some great fights going on. And I've always been a fan of Bellator, and I've always felt like they can really push themselves to that next level. I think they have, in the last couple of years when they had like Rory come on and Gegard Mousasi, they were really looking like they were going to be that solid second brand for the UFC to kind of work alongside. I think in the grand scheme of things, I would love to see Bellator and UFC fighters mix and have those events where we can make super fights and things of this nature, ideally in a world. But I think this is about as close to that as you're going to get. You've really got those real top guys in the UFC outside of the Joneses and the Daniel Cormiers and things like that, who could come over and compete in this tournament. You've got pretty much most of the top 5, top 10 of the UFC in like the last 2-3 years. So it'd be interesting to see how these guys do against each other.
Yeah, definitely. And I think implementing the Bellator cards, now that they're up and running again, and they will be up and running, I think, the Fight and Talk 2 page will definitely be implementing some of the bigger Bellator cards, and we can break them down as well. I think that adds another layer to us, because although we are all MMA fans, the UFC takes precedent because they have been so frequent with their fights and stuff. But I think there is a lot of talent in Bellator, whether... we all look at Bellator and go, oh, well, as soon as someone gets dropped from the UFC, we go, oh, they'll end up in Bellator. 9 times out of 10, they do, and it might be their game plan to pick up the scraps of the UFC. But at the end of the day, they're still picking up guys and girls that are still very, very elite and, in the top of their games. But how did the Yoel versus Rumble fight, Adler, you were talking a little bit about before we hit record. How do you see that going, man?
I no idea. Like it'll just be, that's what I was saying earlier. It'll just be another Francis and Lewis too, because I just don't see how either of them knock each other out. But both of them are the best people at knocking people out. So it's like it's a rock and hard place, really. I think that Yoel Romero by heel hook 10 seconds into the first round. Final pick.
Straight in. He's straight in.
Yeah, straight Imanari roll, bounces off his head.
George, how do you see it going, man? Are you going to be tuning into that? Obviously, I think it's more leaned towards the European fans as well, so it won't be too bad for us. But it could mean some pretty stacked weekends with regards to having Bellator on a Friday, the UFC on a Saturday, or however it may play out. I feel like for fight fans, these coming months, obviously with the fights that we have coming up in the UFC that are booked anyway, with adding Bellator to that, it's going to be absolutely huge. I don't think we're going to get, no one's going to get any sleep. We're all going to be tired, and it's just going to be a nightmare. But there's going to be some absolute bangers coming out. But what's your favorite fight on that card, George?
No, it's really great. It's fantastic. I think that Romero Rumble fight is the night before Paulo Costa and Rob Whittaker guy, so that's a pretty great weekend. But I think we've been saying for a while now that like Bellator need to make this big play, like they need to make this big like kind of statement. Like they've always been viewed as like the little brother, haven't they, of the UFC? They've always been like, oh, it's all right, I'll tune into it, but I'm not that interested in it. And I think it feels like it's starting to change for Bellator slightly now. Like this, like when Rumble Johnson and when Romero signed for Bellator back before Christmas, I remember as this was the first kind of time we were starting to speak, I remember saying that this should be a tournament. It makes total sense that this should be a tournament, and everybody else was saying it should be a tournament. And I'm really glad that Scott Coker and Bellator have decided to go with that kind of element of, with another tournament style thing. But like the other announcements last night, though, obviously Pitbull and Sanchez have got their semi-final fight, and that is the fight. That's the fight AJ McKee, who I think is a superstar. I think he's brilliant. There was other great fights announced. Apparently tonight they've got more announcements. They're going to announce Usman Nurmagomedov's debut fight in the Bellator. Obviously, Khabib's cousin and Umar's brother. And so and obviously the Showtime deal. Apparently they've got a big deal to announce here in the UK and Europe. I just think that this is the most serious play that Bellator have ever made, and really, what Scott Coker has wanted has been this like, I want the MMA world to talk about Bellator. Stop talking about the UFC for a minute and talk about us. And last night and today, it's felt like that for the first time in a long time, they've been the company that everyone's talking about. All 4 fights are great. The guy who I can't pronounce for Love Nor Money, I've tried all day. Apparently, he's a light heavyweight champion in a Russian promotion, so he's no mug. And all the other guys are great. But obviously, the big one is Romero Rumble, and I can't wait. And hopefully, it will live up to all expectations. And I genuinely can't pick a winner from it either. That's the other great thing. I think anyone could take that, to be honest. So that's the other really interesting thing about this tournament, is that like any one of the 8 could end up winning it. So yeah, fair play to Bellator. Brilliant. And I'm sure, as we all will be, we'll definitely be tuning in to watch it.
No, absolutely. And I think there is such a large talent pool in Bellator as well. Obviously, you said about Michael Venom Page, fantastic highlight reel fighter. Lima, who obviously he got knocked out by, but he's a fantastic fighter as well. Rory McDonald, these guys, Ryan Bader, even going down in weight to like the James Gallagher kind of people, although they have these personas and this kind of stuff. Dylan Dennis, it would be great to see all of these people fight again, to see what they're actually made of. Dennis is obviously 2-0, but it would be good to see them fighting again. And like Prath said, man, just having these cross promotions and having Bellator as that kind of like backup for the UFC to take those fighters, but also to move from Bellator into the UFC, like we saw Chandler do. So there's no reason why people have to be fixed to these one promotions, But I'm really excited for it. I'm really looking forward to the tournament and for what they've got coming up in the rest of the year as well. And that brings us to the ultimate finish of the show, to be honest with you. So if you are not already subscribed to us, hit like, hit subscribe, comment, follow us on social media. I look after the social media platform, which is obviously the Fight and Talk 2 on Twitter. George looks after the Instagram, same name, Fight and Talk 2. Thank you very much, Adler, for joining us on the show as well.
Thanks for having me.
No drama at all. And we will be doing a post fight just to see if any of our picks came through. And of course, if you haven't already, check out the interview that I did yesterday with Ben Ellis, who is 3-0 in Cage Warriors. He's an absolutely lovely guy. Great conversation with him as well. A little bit of in-depth, look into his life, which was absolutely fantastic. If you haven't already seen that, check that out. And of course, hit like and subscribe as well. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.